Um, when you look at President Trump's arc, you see that, first of all, if you didn't know, his pastor when he was a kid was Norman Vincent Peale, the very same inspirational person who I just mentioned that Mike Cernovich was inspired by, and I was, and lots of other people. And you see that Trump apparently doesn't have a sense of what he can't do. He doesn't have some sense that there's something in this simulation that's not available to him. He treats the world like everything is available to him, and he's the author of the simulation. Is it working? Clearly it is. He treats the world like he has complete control over it. And although in any, short-term way, you can see that that's not true, but over the larger arc of his story, it's very much true. You've rarely seen anybody get as much as he wants out of life as President Trump. And he looks like he's just getting started. It looks like the good stuff is still ahead of us. So I would suggest that there are a number of people who have followed the same trail. And if you go back further, there's actually an origin for this way of thinking. And it came from Dale Carnegie. Dale Carnegie, back in 1800s, I guess, was the richest person in the country, maybe the world, I don't know. But he was very rich. And he got this author, Napoleon Hill. He talked him into interviewing other rich people to find out what it was that rich people were doing that made them successful and other people were not doing. Right. Napoleon Hill wrote Think and Grow Rich. That was his big bestseller. Now so he interviewed rich people to try to figure out what they had in common. And then learning from Napoleon Hill was Norman Vincent Peale. And learning from Norman Vincent Peale was a lot of people, including President Trump, including me, including, I'll bet, Tony Robbins. I've never asked him, but I'll bet. And I'll bet, and Mike Cernovich, etc. Here are some people that I've identified as having put in the time to try to learn the interface for reality. These are people who seem to be able to actually change the simulation at will. People who have figured out where the buttons are to get whatever they want. And if you look at their lives, they seem to be accumulating everything they want. Here's some people you should follow. I mentioned Mike Cernovich. James Altucher, you should follow. He knows the user interface for life. Read his work and follow him. Tim Ferriss, another one, went out and systematically absorbed as much as he could about how other people figure out the user interface for life until he had their knowledge. And now, Tim Ferriss can move the world. He actually has that power. Joe Rogan. I don't know if Joe Rogan set out to do this or it just was a coincidence of the career he developed that allowed him to talk to lots of people who have different parts of the answer. But clearly Joe Rogan is somebody who's spent time trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work in every realm, from fitness and nutrition to your career to you name it. I don't know that Joe Rogan ever set out to do that, but that's where he is. Jordan Peterson, of course. Jordan Peterson probably got there through an academic path, studying everything he could about everything from psychology to biology, until when you listen to Jordan Peterson talk about how to live your life, it's quite clear he has figured out the user interface. And people who follow his advice will tell you universally, oh yeah, this works. Naval Ravikant, I hope all of you have heard his name. You should be following him on Twitter at Naval, Naval. Naval does not write books. even though every publisher in the world would beg him to do so. If he ever wrote a book, it would be the best bestseller that was ever written. And like literally, it's possible. I don't know. It's hard to know for sure, but if Naval ever wrote a book, it probably would be in a top 10 of all-time books and maybe number one. It might be the biggest book in the world if he ever wrote one, but he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to sell what he has to offer, which is interesting because it also makes it more valuable. There's something about scarcity that makes it valuable. Naval has spent quite a lifetime figuring out what works and the user interface for life. And he's figured it out. By all objective measures, it seems that Naval can move the world whenever he wants to. He can actually change the whole world in small ways, in little corners, but he can actually walk up to the world and just nudge it now. You can't do that. You don't know how to do that. Naval can walk up to any corner of the world and just push it. You can't do that, right?